You are listening to the Enormocast.
Oh, hello. We have reached this remote mountain crag in the elusive hope of finding one of the most majestic and fearsome creatures known to climbers, the Sportiva squama. Now we wait, aspiring to hear its lonesome and august call. Ah, what good fortune. The cliff before us abounds with this daunting creature, often appearing on boulders and crags in pairs. The Sportiva squama is a fierce predator, known for its diverse hunting skills and sleek movement. Observe as they use tiny edges, dimples, smears, and even the occasional toe or heel hook to close in on their prey, set up, and leap for the kill. Oh my stars, what do we have here? Ah yes, a gentle and beautiful mating pair of vegan squamas. Though these gorgeous green-coated creatures are just as nimble as their lethal brethren, the vegan squama remains an herbivore, living peacefully among its fellow woodland creatures without harm. And you too can go to Sportiva.com, or your favorite local climbing shop, to observe, hold, and maybe even pet a Sportiva squama yourself. But please be wary, because once released on your local rocks, the Sportiva squama will run wild and free, just like you.
We gotta get
Listen, where you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
a
big
house. We
place
sold it
outside
out.
of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold
What's
it
that,
out.
20,000 seats?
We
really should.
Look, you better get up there before he panics. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by La Sportiva
Arc'teryx Equipment,
and with support from Maxim Ropes. Maxim has been keeping the Enormocast off the deck since 2012.
and now we can also thank the chill folks at Yeti. And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is June 2nd, 2025, about 6:30 p.m. here in Colorado, and this is an Enormocast Tweener, one of those little hits that goes between the regular episodes. As promised on episode 304, Sam Stroh and I got back together to talk about what's happened since we recorded that interview, since it had been simmering in the pot for about 8 or 9 months. I thought I'd catch up with Sam, kind of reflect on some of the stuff we talked about and some of the things that have happened since then. And that's what we got here, a tweener with professional climber Sam Stroh. And I'd like to quickly mention that most climbing podcasts would put this out as a bonus episode, but so far, there's no such thing as a bonus episode at the Enormocast because the entire catalog is available out there for you for free. Well, there's sort of a contract. You're supposed to listen to the ads. I try to make them so you don't want to skip them. You know that. And then you consider buying products that you need from the sponsors of the show. Arc'teryx, Sportiva, Yeti, Bonfire's still around, Peter W. Gilroy, Belay Specs. Even if I don't talk about those guys as much anymore, their coupon codes are still out there. So yeah, keep this thing all free, all available by supporting the sponsors, please. Of course, if you're super stoked, you can donate over at enormocast.com. Click the donate button if you're really into it. You know, if the Enormocast is meaningful, if it's affected your life in a overtly positive way, you can head over there and donate if you want, but you don't have to, do ya? All right, let's get to the tweener with Sam Stroh. Sam had just gotten back from Australia. Since we'd recorded the original interview, number 304, he'd been to Spain. He'd spent some time in Bend, a bunch of other stuff. And a bunch of other stuff happened. Some serious stuff that we talk about. So let's put a little mustard on it and catch up with Sam Stroh. Get it? So if you listened to our recent episode with climber Sarah Huniken, you probably heard her say that when she started alpine climbing, basically no women-specific alpine gear existed. Just stuff for the dudes that a woman could maybe size down enough to sort of fit good enough. Luckily, as climbing has evolved, so has women's gear and apparel, and no company has pushed that forward quite like Arc'teryx. The Arc'teryx design team, with input from athletes like Sarah, Ashima Shiraishi, and Amity Warm, are not just dedicated to making great clothing, but want to influence how we see women in climbing: strong, capable, equal. The new summer editions from Arc'teryx continue that ethos: women's shorts, pants, and tanks that fit, look great at the crag and beyond, and above all else, perform. But I'm a dude, right? What the hell do I know about women's clothing? Well, I know that Sarah, Amity, Ashima, and the rest of the women at Arc'teryx wouldn't settle for anything less than gear that inspires them forward and up. And neither should you. So check out the Arc'teryx women's climbing line at arc'teryx.com or your local shop. And of course, they make pretty good stuff for us fellas too. You know, I've been talking to Jordan Cannon. We actually interviewed old Jordan up on the side El Cap with him and Mark. And
cool.
And just watching Instagram and stuff, it's like sounds completely bonkers in Yosemite right now, like in the last couple of weeks.
The monkeys are surely sending right now.
Right.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, actually, it's been such a cool season in that way. Like hanging out around Camp 4 in the lodge, like there's so many young, stoked people getting out. And I remember my first few seasons that were, my first couple seasons in Yosemite were during COVID time, and there was just nobody there, and no international climbers were coming, and it just kind of felt, it was nice. It felt empty, and like the first couple times on El Cap, we had it to ourselves, and it was like amazing. But yeah, it's definitely different this year, and everyone's just, El Cap's getting free climbed like in a day, every other day, it seems. So
yeah, for sure.
It
awesome. Totally seems like that. So they still call themselves the Monkeys?
I think we're not as cool as the Masters and the Monkeys that came before us, but we're trying our best. Yeah.
I gotcha. Cool. I was just curious, honestly, that because there was like an era, and it seems like, quite frankly, most of the principles of that era are dead. Unfortunately, is quite sad. But I wouldn't say most, but quite a few of the luminary names from that didn't survive, mostly due to base jumping. But
I was just about to say, a lot fewer of us are jumping off of things. That's for sure.
That kind of got a little crazy for a while, and it seems like it's quieted down a little bit in terms of that. But that kid who did Freerider in a day while Jordan was up there, that was a buddy of yours, right?
Ethan Moore. He's a young Canadian who was just with me in Australia for a couple months, and he's a super close friend.
Oh, cool.
Really psyched for him.
Yeah, did you do any support on that?
I think I did a lot of
moral support.
Yeah, moral support. We spoke about it a lot in Australia, and he had a lot of questions. And he's 20. He's like a few years younger than me, so it's like an interesting, super close friend / mentor mentee situation, and it's actually incredibly awesome and fulfilling relationship. And super psyched for him. But I didn't do any support. I didn't belay him or anything.
Right, climb on it or anything like that. You were busy. What did you get up to?
I was just going top down on a route on El Cap and doing that type of thing. And friends were coming up and hanging and supporting, and it was a good time. It was it's always hard work up there, and you always get beat up by El Cap. Kind of always beats us all up in a way, but it was less intense of a season. I feel like my last couple seasons I showed up and I was like, I want to do this thing and I want to get it done. And but this season I was more like, I'm going to suss this route out and see how it goes. So
yeah. And you're not going to pre-spray it yet.
I'm not going to pre-spray it. Yeah. That always feels
cool.
a little funny. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So and you sent me a text when we were talking about getting this done, and we're like, my season's done. So what's next then?
I'm hanging out here in Truckee. I drove to Truckee last night, and here at a friend's place for a couple days, just recovering and detoxing from Yosemite time. And yeah, I fly to France on Monday, so I'm off to Sayus for a month, and I'll be like in and around France and southern Switzerland till the beginning of August. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. You going to go to the
Yeah.
Verdun?
Nope, but I was in the Verdun my last trip there, and that was
Okay, cool.
stellar. But yeah,
Nice. Yeah, that's
Um,
like top 3 crags of the world for me, the
Yeah.
Verdun in particular. I mean, I've been to Sayus as well, but for my proclivities, I don't know, just the majesty of the Verdun is pretty sick.
yeah. Well, the Verdun has like Sayus-esque cliffs, just like but in the most insane place, and it's the Verdun's amazing. And you can also
Awesome.
do like overhanging, incredible tufa climbing, and then go climb the like historic stuff from the 80s. It's just like an incredible zone. Yeah, I fell in love with that place.
The reason I wanted to do this is because I put out this interview that we did way back in August. I didn't get around to it until, just a couple weeks ago or a month ago or so. Partially because I had a bunch of stuff when we got it, and then I kind of slowed the output at the beginning of the year down to 1 a month. And so I sort of had this backlog, and, I tend to not worry about it too much because we tend to not talk terribly timely, when we talk about how you started climbing and all those sorts of things, but none of that changes, so it doesn't really make too much difference. But it still felt a little aged, and there was some serious reasons for that too, which we might talk about here. But looking back, like the other thing that's interesting is that we were at the academy. We were talking a little bit about that in there. Let's sort of sprinkled in some inside baseball kind of talk about being a sponsored climber. And it was like sponsorship at that level was kind of relatively new to you, and you were kind of like, yeah, I'm here sort of making a first impression, I think is literally what you said on there. So how's that settled in to it's kind of the way you think about it, even just a few months later?
I mean, it's been like incredible, to be honest. Like, I just feel like I'm totally living the dream, and I feel like incredibly lucky and grateful and supported, and it's brilliant. Like, I feel like my values align pretty well with the people and brands that I'm working with, which makes it easy, and I don't feel like I'm selling out too much. And yeah, I just feel super lucky, and I just feel like I get to live my dream of traveling and climbing and doing that whole thing. So,
What do you mean by we probably talked about this a little bit. Maybe you can be more cogent about it. Like your values aligning with what it means to be a pro climber for you.
well, I think Arc'teryx they definitely have the intention of trying to remain like core to all of these communities and sports that they're involved in. And so they don't want us doing stuff that we don't want to be doing. They just want us to, like, all of our, whatever, like, art that we're creating around the projects that we have or what have you, to all be motivated by intrinsic motivations or all stem from like intrinsic motivations. So, which kind of just makes it so, you're not just doing things that you don't want to be doing or that feel lame or that feel inauthentic. And so when you don't have to do those things, and it's like you have a reciprocal relationship, it's just like it's a rad thing.
Yeah, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of go backwards in what the last 9 months looked like. But the thing that I kind of really want to talk to you about too is your trip to Australia. Having a trip in my past there a long time. I mean, I kind of shocked you a little bit, I bet, when I told you how long ago I'd been in Arapalis, before you were born. But I mean, it's so funny because I think about that trip a lot still. And I'd been there twice, but the last time was in the early middle 90s. And I also recently just reconnected with a guy that I got to know really well there and climbed here in the States with as well. This guy from Katoomba named Christian Mortensen.
Okay. I was in Katoomba for a month, so maybe
he's not much of a climber anymore.
Okay.
But if you'd have wrecked yourself, you might have. He's a paramedic and so first responder guy, so he might have picked you up. But that would have been tragic irony. But so it's just interesting because I just had it was such a formative trip for me. It was the first time I ever went overseas to climb. It was also kind of like, the first time I just grabbed a few $1,000s and left for as long as I could make it happen, like that style of trip, and was really formative to me. Hitchhiking and just finding everything on the fly because it was pre-internet, so you just showed up and hoped you could find climbs and climbers and things like that with a little bit of information from Climbing Magazine or whatever. But yeah, so tell me about your trip. It's still this kind of archetypal thing, I think, to go to Arapiles and to go to the Blue Mountains. It's changed, but I don't think it's changed that much.
I've been seeing so many incredible photos from like the Blue Mountains and Taipan while the Groove Train video of Ben Cossey doing that Groove Train route on Taipan is like one of the best sport climbing videos of all time. And it's so rad and super inspiring. But I wasn't hitchhiking, and there I had a lot of info, and I was like the opposite. I flew into Sydney, and my buddies from Katoomba, drove and picked me up and drove me back to their place. And
I mean, that's totally normal, dude. I'm not saying anyone should do it the way it was. Simply a case of how it had to be done when I did it. If the internet had existed, I would have looked at it before going.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was different than most of my other trips though, because I feel like, when I've been to Europe for the first couple times, it's like we're on such a budget, and whoever I'm with, we're just like, we're picking up a rental car from some random person on like a website, so we like don't have to pay the under 25 fees that you would have to if you went through like Hertz or whoever. So you're like, you're in France and you're trying to rent a car from someone who doesn't speak English, and you don't drive stick shift, and that's the only car that they have, and like it's always like a total shit show, and you're having to like, I mean, I remember renting a car in Greece when I was 18 and with a fake ID, and I did not know how to drive stick shift, and I had to like learn on the spot with this this dude Dimitri, and it was just like a crazy thing, and it was like super scary. Like I thought I was gonna like destroy the transmission on this car, and I probably did.
Yeah,
but it was like
did.
It was very nice to rock up to Sydney and just like my buddies come and pick me up from the airport. That was great. But yeah, talking about the trip, it was an interesting trip from like from a climbing perspective. It wasn't like a super successful trip. Like we had a lot of bad weather, and it was I just didn't kind of like do the type of climbing that I was hoping to do, and the amount that I was hoping to do, and that's totally fine. Or that I guess it's fine. It's also like challenging at times when you're really psyched to climb and you're in Katoomba and it's just wet and brooding every day, and it's it's like not ideal, and you don't get a ton of climbing in. But on the other side of it, I was like living in this house in Katoomba with all of my best friends, and we were all just all of us climbers, and that was like a dream that I've always wanted to have, of like living in a house with all of my best homies who are all stoked on climbing. And like that was incredible from a social standpoint. It was a great trip, and the Australian climbing scene is really cool, and there's like so many people, and it's like smaller and feels more like tight knit, and it was just like a cool climbing community to tap into for a couple months. And from that point of view, it was a really good trip.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because that part of the trip was same as mine. I just happened to make those friends on the fly and ended up in a house full of climbers up in Blackheath, actually. No. Yeah. I think it was in maybe we were in Mount Vic. I can't remember. But it's hard to remember where you were when same thing, like you're just getting driven everywhere and stuff. But yeah, it was the same thing of like I slept under their little woody, and we all became like super good friends. So that was really similar, actually. And the vibe up there is cool and tight knit, and to the point, like back then it was like I was a 5'11" climber, but everybody thought I was a really good crack climber, and everybody in the Blue Mountain, like the word got out that this guy from Colorado was like into crack climbing, and so all these people kept getting in touch with me to go crack climbing for me to be their rope gun on like cracks. So that was actually really funny.
Yeah, no, I had a similar experience at a crag one day where this dude was like, "Oh, you're from America? Do you know the other, like this other?" I was, my buddy Adrian, who you know was in Australia. He's been living there this year, and then our German friend Oliver, who's like a total weapon. He's also there, and they're both, have climbed 514 cracks or whatever. And like the locals knew that, and they're like, "Oh, you're also from America? Do you know like the kid from Germany and the other kid who's climbed the Cobra Crack? Like tell them they have to come try our crack projects." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll let them know." So they're like psyched when people like out of climb cracks come to the Blue Mountains.
That's awesome. So eventually you moved over to the Grampians and to Raps.
Yep, we were in Katoomba for a little bit over a month, and I would say we had 3 good climbing
Ooh,
days.
ouch.
We like got out pretty consistently, but it was like kind of flitting between being in the mid 80s or Fahrenheit or raining. So we had like 3 days where it was under 70 degrees and like wasn't raining. So yeah, that's how it goes. And but yeah, and then we went to the Grampians and Annapolis, and we spent most of our time in Annapolis because it's just like where the scene is, and it's so easy to walk to all the climbing. And yeah, when you're in like a big group too, and like more people are psyched on Annapolis, it's just easier to like day trip to Taipan or something like that. So
yeah, I don't even remember camping down there at all. We would day trip as well.
In Annapolis, it's like it's so incredible. Like it's like the hidden valley of Australia, right? Like the dirt bag climbing scene, and you just like walk to all the climbing and from your campsite, and it's just yeah, it's a beautiful spot.
Did you have better weather?
Yeah, we did. I mean, we did have like a week or 2 of really unseasonably hot weather. Like I heard it usually gets really cold because we were there in April, and I heard it usually gets quite cold in Annapolis in April, and we definitely had quite a few days that were a week or so of 80-degree weather, and everyone was like, y'all need to come back. Like, this is really not normal. And so, yeah, it's kind of hard to motivate when it's just hot as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what's funny is I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is that there was most of the period of my early climbing of like 10 to 15 years, probably, I didn't give a shit about conditions. Like the idea of worrying about that didn't occur to me, and it didn't sort of pervade the scene that I was in at all. Like you just went climbing, whether it was sunny or, I mean, rainy, obviously, but because I was there over New Year's both times I was there, and it's the dead of summer, and and it's hot as balls, and like, but I don't ever remember thinking like, oh, I shouldn't be here at this time, or I should be climbing here. I mean, you know, when you're not climbing quite as hard, it probably doesn't matter. That was probably the shift in my own thinking. But this focus on like condies or whatever has been, it's like, I'm like, God, did I ever even fucking think about that? I'm like, no. And like, I won't climb in the sun. I mean, you have to like, it either has to be like, 10 degrees out, or, you have to drag me kicking and screaming into climbing in the sun. And I don't ever remember even thinking about that back in the day. It's just like, okay, you're going to sweat. It's going to be horrible, but you're just going to do it anyway because you showed up and it's time to go climbing, kind of a thing. So I don't know. It's pretty fascinating.
I know, it's funny how it evolves, and you like don't really notice like all that. You're like, yeah, 1 year you're just having fun in the sun, and then 2 years later someone would have to put a gun to your head to climb in the sun. Like,
I know, totally.
It's so funny. Yeah, but I mean that's kind of what it evolved into, was like, yeah, doing more like moderate classics and just enjoying the area as opposed to going and trying to like send and perform and whatnot. So it's just can be difficult when you fly halfway across the world and you care about trying to climb your best. It can be hard, because it should, if it's 80 degrees, you should probably like drop your expectations and just go have fun with your friends. But it can be surprisingly difficult to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much good climbing there, though.
Yeah.
Taking it down a notch and doing all these classic routes.
I mean, we just did so many really good, amazing routes between like 12B and 13B. That are like super, and it's like such a weird style because like it's like mixed, and like a lot of people like they leave all their gear in a route for the whole season. It's like really? Kind of weird. Like it's like that's like kind of like everyone pinks points all the things, so you like, or people pink point all the routes, and you like don't really know what gets red pointed, what gets pink pointed, so you like show up, and that's just kind of like an interesting thing. Yeah, it was like a little confusing. I think probably back in the day, I bet it was, I think it does seem like, I was kind of like, oh, this is weird. Like, I think there should be, I was like, I think we should either just have it be like you climb everything from the ground and you put the gear in and you like remove it when you leave. Or like, it was like too vague and there was too much like gray area of like showing up at a crag and half the crag would be fixed with like nuts and then the other half wouldn't. And you're kind of like, this is
they've definitely grown soft. And I'm going on record for anybody who's listening from over there. I don't think that shit would have flown back in the day. They still got the carrots.
A lot of things have been retroed, so I
Okay.
clipped very few carrots, if
Okay.
any, I think. Um, yeah, yeah, no carrot bolts. But I mean, one that's coming to mind is like that yesterday thing. Did you climb that thing? It's like a classic 26, like all gear, kind of crack climb into a face climb thing up. And I don't know. There's so many. It's like there's so many things and there's so many gullies that it's like
Yeah.
there's so many routes.
26 would have been pushing it for me
Mhm.
back then.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, I think, what is that, like 12B or so?
12C.
12C.
Mhm.
Yeah. See, that would have been asking a lot of me at the time. I think I climbed one or two, like, isn't Mr. Joshua over on the Taipan wall around that grade? 24, 25, 26, something like that. But anyhow.
Maybe. A lot of
But,
that cliff is somewhat closed, so
Yeah.
we climbed on what was open,
Right.
and that was like plenty for the time we had there. But
Right.
it is a shame to like see all the chalk and be like, oh, you can't climb on that anymore. Or it seems like really dynamic with the closures and like
Yeah. What's
what
going on?
is open. Like it seems like some things are vaguely closed, and yeah, I as being like an outsider, I really didn't want to be on the wrong side, so I just climbed on the things that were very explicitly open.
Was that a topic with the locals?
A little bit. I think it's cooled down a bit. My friends who were there last year said it was kind of the only thing that anyone talked about for a while was the closures. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the interesting thing when I showed up there, I ended up camping with these two guys who were kind of two of the hottest young sport climbers at the time, and went on to different kind of levels of success as kind of famous Australian sport climbers. Garth Miller and Saxon Johns, their names are, and but they were like kids,
Okay.
and this was like back in a time when like it wasn't so common to have young kids like climbing at all or even that hard. And so I camped with them, and they were like sort of boggling my mind with their whole sport climbing thing. And Rapley's isn't amazing for sport climbing, actually. A lot of the stuff then was really old school, bolted and things like that. But they were sort of funny because they were like equally impressed that I would go and climb some like 511 finger crack on gear. And so it was kind of this weird, funny little mutual thing that was happening. The other thing that I learned about on that trip was what a rest day was, because I didn't take one, and I probably climbed for like, honestly, I bet it was something like 25 days straight or something. It's like you'd bought the ticket, you had at a certain amount of time, and like I fully crashed where I couldn't climb anything. I couldn't climb like 5'9". And or 5'8" even sometimes, and like I actually kind of thought there was something wrong with me, like the food or the water or something. And then those guys were like, "Dude, when was the last time you took a rest day?" I was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Yeah, where you don't go climbing." I'm like, "Well, there was the I'd go into Naranjo for the morning, but I'd come back and climb in the afternoon or whatever." So then they basically were like, "Yeah, dude, you got to stop, and not just for a day. You have to take like a week off." And so I took a few days off and realized, oh yeah, they're totally right. I can't. I'm like completely depleted.
Totally. Yeah. And then you go to Rifle nowadays, and people are like, "Wow, you." I mean, I've only been there for one trip, but people are like, "Oh, you climbed 2 days in a row?" And I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Damn, you're gonna dig yourself into a hole."
I tried.
Like, maybe.
I recently climbed 2 days in a row, and it was brutal. But I'm old as dirt too. So, but yeah, it was a pretty fascinating trip for me. I'm glad that you found a Rapley's to have that same vibe of like just dropping in and living the life. And yeah, like the fact that it's right there is pretty ridiculous.
It was definitely like a special little moment because there's like no service out there, and you're just walking to the climbing. So it's just really simple life of you wake up, make breakfast with your little group that you're camping with, and you roll out to the cliffs and obviously try and find the shade and do your thing. And there's like nothing else going on. Simple life. Yeah, it's good.
Totally simple life. Before that, we met up in August again, and what did you end up doing for the fall?
So I want to say,
you can't remember.
Well, there's just been a lot. I feel like I've been a lot of places since our last conversation, but I went to Picos de Europa to try that route on El Naranjo del Bulnes, and that went. I've kind of like actually before our conversation in August, I was like riding a big, like, I feel like I was riding a wave, and like a lot of things were going well. And like climbing wise, I was feeling really good and having successes. And I kind of knew in the moment, I was like, this isn't going to last. I was like, this has been a really good year. And I know it's eventually going to undulate in the other direction. And that kind of started on that trip to Spain. And we had, we planned for 3 weeks at base camp to go try this route. And we were there for 3 days, or we showed up and there was a week of rain. So we like postponed and we went to Rodayar and we like sport climbed for a few days. And then we drove back across Spain, got to Picos and hiked up to base camp. We were there for 3 days and we saw like 2 days of rain on the forecast when we hiked up, and we were like, oh, that'll be nothing. And then we had a couple days, looked back, and then there was rain for like our entire forecast that we could see. And we were like, shoot, what do we do? Are we just going to sit up here and kind of just spend our whole month up here in the rain, or should we pivot and go do something else? And we kind of decided to pivot, and we hiked down from base camp and had a couple days looking at the weather, and it didn't really improve. So we went to Mallorca. We were just like, screw this. And we just got the like, $50 flight to Mallorca and went deep water soloing and tried to like make the most of our time there. And that was like absolutely incredible. I was there with my friend Kyle, and Taylor was there shooting photos. And yeah, so that was the start, but it was still kind of, it was like an incredible time in Mallorca, and I've always wanted to go there. And that style of climbing, it's just, yeah, it's as dreamy as it looks, but it's also hard to like get all psyched up for a project like the one on El Naranjo. And then it like, you don't even, when you don't even really get to try, it's like kind of a bummer. That's how it is, weather.
Yeah. What were you guys going to climb on that?
There's this route called Ore Bayou. It's a Blue Brothers route. Yeah. We climbed on it a little bit. It was really cool. Very, very cool. I'm unsure if I'll go back, but I'm sure I will at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, I was feeling super tired I just felt like I'd been like go, go, go and traveling and going to all these places. And I just felt a little burnt and was like, I could use a bit of time, like in a house to like chill. So my partner, Madeline, and I went up to Smith Rock, and we like rented a place in Redmond for a couple months and just kind of relaxed and sport climbed for a little bit and let the body and mind rejuvenate. And then after that, I went to New Mexico for the holidays, spent some time with my family up there, and then went to Vegas in January and kind of trained up for 6 weeks for this trip to Australia. And then I was there for 2 months, and then went Yosemite the last month. So that's what I've been up to.
Living the dream. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of hinted at like some serious shit that's gone down between our interview and now. And one thing that came up in both your interview and in Quentin Roberts' interview that I'd gotten at the same time was we were talking about skateboarding. You and Quentin and Mike Gardner, I think the day like we did those interviews had been out the day before or something like that, all kind of connecting on the skateboarding thing. And both you and Quentin were like, Jesus, yeah, we're not like Mike, like we're skateboarders, but we're not like what he does. And he was there, and I also have had a relationship with Mike that started before his interview, and then we did a really nice interview together and had hung out a couple times since then. And that's one of the things that happened between that time and putting these interviews out and talking again was that Mike passed away. And I was just wondering if you had some words to say about that, and if how that affected you guys. And you have a really tight knit team, and I know you probably didn't know Mike that well, but had met him briefly at some Arc'teryx things and like that. But it's still, again, you're just fresh into this pro thing, and then one of the team disappears on a big mountain is a pretty heavy thing.
We were at the skate park like right before our last conversation we had, and spent a bit of time together at the academy, and then we pretty much flew right from that event in Squamish, and we went to this photo shoot in Bishop, California, and Crispin Chetler was cooking up like a crazy artistic thing that we were a part of. And so me and Mike hung out for I think we were in Bishop for 5 days together, and we just had a lot of late nights. We were like shooting late into the night, and had a lot of conversations in the truck, like driving to and from the place that we were shooting. And it was just kind of interesting. We were talking about our trips. He was going to Nepal and I was going to Spain, and we were just kind of like, it was just like a friendship starting, like going to the skate park and like connecting on that level, and then going and doing this thing. And, he just had such a gift for being like relatable and connecting with people and being present and supportive in each conversation. And I feel like lucky that I just had those couple weeks to get to know him a little better. And I was definitely looking forward to doing some cool skate climbing trips with him at some point. And it was definitely like a shock to get the news when I had just gotten back. I had kind of just gotten back from Picos de Europa, and we got the email that Mike had passed away. And I think it was just really like, it didn't really land super well at first, like, because we were hanging out like right before we both left on our trips, and it just didn't feel like such a energetic and compassionate young person like wasn't with us anymore. Like, I feel like I haven't had a ton of people that are like close to me that have passed away in my life. Like, I'm really lucky in that way. And it just didn't make any sense. I was kind of like, oh yeah, no, Mike wouldn't be gone. Like, he's such an incredible person. Like, that wouldn't make sense, right? So we hadn't known each other super long, so I felt it might not be like articulating it super well, but just kind of like robbed from like this new friendship type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt definitely more heartbroken for, all the people that knew him and that were really close to him and that knew him longer. And it definitely was really hard for the whole team, because he was such a integral part of that family, and like someone that everybody on the team could go to and connect with. And yeah, he left a mark for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. I really believe that, because, like you're saying, you don't know him that well. I didn't know him that well. And yeah, you certainly always go to like, well, I do anyways. Like, well, what's my grief compared to his mom, and or compared to Sam, who was there, and all those sorts of things. And it's kind of like, well, I mean, I have these weird things for him. Am I even worthy of, like, was our friendship that deep? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like sometimes it's like robbing the people, but that's stupid, because that's not real. I mean, that's a feeling I have, but I also know that it's not a real feeling, that I can feel whatever I want about Mike's passing. But I think what you just said is really interesting, because I feel the same way of like, man, I just gotten to know him. We'd spent some time together, some really great conversations, but then, I just imagined, I'll just see Mike, at these things for whatever, the rest of our lives or whatever, and it's just something that's going to grow, and to have that disappear all of a sudden was quite a shock. And it almost sounds selfish, but it's certainly not from that point of view.
The way you were feeling, I can relate to that for sure. And you're right in that it's we shouldn't like judge those feelings as much, and definitely like accept and allow them to appear and pass and what have you. But it was challenging. It was really sad. It's definitely very sad.
Yeah, and the other thing that with our connection is that one of the reasons we ever connected to begin with was because he had sort of had this, well, the other way around. Julie Kennedy, Hayden Kennedy's mom, had this like vision of Hayden when she saw Mike in the Tetons walking down the trail, and like stopped him and said, "Hey, who are you?" Like, because he has like a similar frame, especially from a distance, as what Hayden had. And the reason I ended up ever meeting him is because of that. And a friend of mine who Julie Kennedy's is kind of his kid's godmother in a way. I said, "Hey, let's head up to Bozeman, but let's stop by and I want you to meet this guy, Mike Gardner, that I met at Julie and Michael's house." So yeah, so then like, all those feelings kind of came back too. So that was pretty heavy as well. But it's just kind of I don't know, it's something that's sort of, I think, always worth talking about is these events like that happen in the mountains, and losing friends, even if they were fast friends like Mike was.
It's just like a testament to his character that we didn't know him that well, and he still had an impact on us in that way,
Yeah, I mean, that was the sort of magic of the guy, right?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely like quality over quantity time. But it does like also spark. I remember getting the news, and I had some friends that were planning on going to Chalten right after that, and like some really close friends. And I was kind of like, huh, well, it just made me like think of my friends going on a trip and dying, and me going and on a trip and dying. Like it just made it seem way more real. And I was kind of
Yeah.
like, huh, I was in Oregon, you know, when I was just talking about I
Mm-hmm.
went to Oregon to kind of have a bit of less travel time, and I was in a house with my partner Maddie, and we were just kind of, I told her, and we definitely had some conversations where, she was like, I don't, really don't want you to die.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to die either. And it just made it just kind of like sparked some conversations. And yeah, because when you're 19, 20 years old running around these big walls, and I mean, it's just not crossing your mind as much. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be safe and cautious and
Yeah.
totally have like my systems locked in, but I feel like I'm second guessing a bit more these days. Not second guessing, but I'm like double, triple checking more,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm like feel uncertain about. Like I know it's really good to be cautious, but then I also see some people that I see as being too cautious to where it's almost a negative. Do you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, it's
Well, it
kind of been
sounds
a
like,
while
I
since
mean,
those conversations.
honestly, it sounds like that was probably a good place to be, chilling in Bend, having some
Mhm.
time to reflect, having your partner
Yeah.
there versus just, hearing it and getting on a plane the next day to the next place,
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like maybe that was a pretty good spot to be in to hear that kind of news or to be able to reflect on it, actually, not necessarily hear it, but
Yeah.
the moments afterwards.
Yeah, it's definitely a really difficult dynamic. I want to go to these places that have more risk, and you don't want to let like fear and uncertainty kind of rule over your life, but you want to be there for the people that you've built a life with. So, and that bring you a ton of joy and happiness, and you do the same for them. And it's just, yeah, it's sad when those things end, but I guess it's only like the expectation that you're going to be with them forever that makes it a sad thing when they aren't there anymore, right? Going back to Mike, I think, and I was just the way I kind of took it was like I'm just going to learn what I can from the time we had and be appreciative of the time I did get to have with him, and like that's that's how it is. So yeah, and try and like be aware of what I'm grasping for in other ways, and if I'm like trying to hold on to things that are passing, like that doesn't
Yeah.
really work. It's not a good way to live.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're like
hmm
hinting on some pretty deep philosophies there,
hmm
about impermanence and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
but it's a normal evolution. You're not that old, but age
Yeah.
isn't the same as experience, and your
hmm
experience is now going to include people around you having accidents and at times not coming back. That's just
hmm
like, Andrew and I have talked about it a bunch on the other podcasts. Like if you climb at a certain level and long enough and your tentacles go out into the world and meet all these people, you're going to, some people are going to die because we're into big
hmm
climbing,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
it's just like part of the deal, but it doesn't have to make you too cautious or scared, but it just makes
hmm
you think and maybe reflect, and reflection is always a good idea in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree.
And I think
And
that's the big difference with the 19-year-old, 18-year-old is we didn't reflect. We were too
yeah,
busy going forward,
you're too constantly locked in to be reflecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway.
But I guess speaking of not being too old, I feel old when all these 20 and 21-year-olds are climbing El Cap every other day in a day. It's crazy. It was really cool. Like I got to watch Connor, like he did a few routes in a day this season, and I got to like give him some beta, and I got to even like watch him climb Golden Gate one day because I was like off to the side, and it was like really inspiring and incredible to watch that caliber of climbing go down. It was really cool.
Yeah, I didn't even hear about any
Yeah.
of that. It was just like
Mhm.
overshadowed by.
I know. I think he's sitting on that stuff right now, but I'm sure he'll drop it at some point. Um, he's sitting on that
I mean,
info.
that's just the thing, like
Mhm.
yeah, and that kid Will Moss obviously just crushing
Yeah.
crushing El Cap into a little, like the, I don't know, you probably don't know Kids in the Hall. You ever watch old Kids in the Hall? You know what that is?
No, I don't.
Okay. You should check it out. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah.
There's,
Well, yeah, I kind of like tried to change the topic there, but I also, yeah, thanks for listening. And I think, yeah, it is good to reflect on those things and thanks for chatting about it.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you went over and we talked at length about your old pal Adrian and you guys' partnership over the years and stuff. But that's one of the people you hooked up with in Australia because he's been over there in a while. And one thing you did reflect on in that is how you guys don't hang out like constantly the way you used to. So how was that reconnecting?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it was, as good as, having a super close friend who you haven't seen in a while and getting to like go and spend a bunch of, it was actually more like quantity time over quality time that time, so it's always kind of nice to, instead of like feel like you have to be super present and locked in and like appreciating every moment, to be like, oh, we got like 2 months, we could just like hang out. I mean, it was also, it was reflection there. It was just raining a bunch, so we were just like hanging out in the kitchen talking about all the things we want to get up to over the next few years. And I think we all like gained a lot of inspiration from bouncing ideas off of one another. And but it's also, we're growing up, and Adrian has other stuff going on in life with school and kind of having inspirations outside of climbing, and you just gotta support people in your life and like let them follow the shit that they're psyched on, and not think back on when we were just hanging out and just climbing with nothing else to do. But yeah, and it's like rad to see people go through new chapters and like support them through them. It's cool.
Yeah, you have these times and then you go your separate ways. It's kind of interesting. I have plenty of partners in my life that were like that as far as climbing was concerned, like just being in it and you're like, this is never going to end. We're never going to not just do this. It's going to be go on really forever and ever.
To recognize impermanence when shit is really good, like it kind of goes both ways. Like, when you're in a really challenging moment, it's like, good to remind yourself, like this too shall pass. But then, when you're like having the most joyous, epic time, are you also going to remind yourself that this also will pass,
Right.
Yeah, it's but I think it's good. I think it's good to recognize it in both situations.
So do you want to talk about what you got on deck, or are you tight-lipped about the future Sam Stroh projects and trips?
Well, I feel like I'm on the outs of this kind of like slump over the past few months. Maybe we'll start like riding a new wave at some point, But yeah, that'd be good.
Start paddling. It's coming.
But yeah, I'm really excited to go off to France and go back to Sayus. That crag's like absolutely incredible. Get some sport climbing shape. And me and Jim Pope are going to link up after, I'm going to be in Chamonix for the Arc'teryx Academy there at the beginning of July. And then me and Jim Pope are going to link up and go climb some alpine rock routes together, and looking forward to that. And then, coming home, and we'll be going to Squamish and then back in Yosemite to try and finish up some projects. Yeah. It's just the classic, like go sport climbing, try and get fit, go into the mountains, or go try some big wall and try and pass the final exam. Just kind of on that program. Yeah.
That sounds good. Yeah, Jim, that'll be quite interesting. That guy comes from a very different background than you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, I know I'm psyched to see how we get on. I mean, he seems like a really cool dude, but he's been like in the comp climbing scene for a long time, but he's also like such an incredible all-rounder. He's like climbs mountains and does those insane grit routes, and also wins comps, and I'm sure we have a lot to learn from him if we go climbing together. So yeah, I'm super keen. I think we're gonna go try this like amazing route in Switzerland called l'Histoire sans fin. I might have butchered that. L'Histoire sans fin? Yeah, some French.
Yeah, I have no idea. Don't worry about me calling you out on that one.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, it's not even pre-spray because no one will understand it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the kind of thing, when what we're talking about is trying to keep your cards close, but being psyched and talking about your projects is fun too,
Yeah, I know. It's such a weird game. I'm not a master on the balance of the two. It always like feels so wrong to pre-spray about things, but I'm kind of like, yeah, but then you're just talking about what you're excited about. Like, what is the shame in that? Or what's so bad about that?
I mean, we always did it. It's just a matter of where it goes now. We have this like public platforms that it goes out into the greater world. But I mean, that's all you ever talk about is what are you doing? What are you getting now? Where are you going? Like, that's all you ever talked about back in the day, even, because you're not going to talk about your feelings and stuff. You're just going to talk about climbing and what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel really lucky. I feel like my friends and I, we do a lot of talking about feelings these days, and it almost feels weird to talk about climbing. Like sometimes, like it, yeah, even getting on this conversation with you, I'm like, oh wow, I'm going to talk about climbing for an hour. And I'm not going to talk about my feelings with this other person. Like it's such a
but
treat.
we did.
Yeah, but we did. Yeah, but yeah.
You should know better when I'm involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of future stuff and talking about Michael, I know we were when we were hanging out in Bishop, he was kind of talking about doing some sort of motorcycle skate alpine trip of some sort, and I was kind of like been thinking on that the last couple of days, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll dream up some motorcycle skateboard like on the road mission. That would be a fun thing to do, because he kind of implanted that idea. So
yeah,
maybe look out for that in the future.
Yeah. Quentin would go.
Oh, Quentin, he'd be well psyched. No, I feel more. I'm feeling more inspired by. I feel like I've been really focused on like leveling up physically and getting better at sport climbing and that whole game, so I can be better prepared for projects in Yosemite and whatnot over the in the future. And I've been like, doing way more sport climbing and bouldering chips over the past few years, and I feel the teeter totter like flipping the other way, and I'm like, oh, I want to go on more adventure trips and do that type of thing now. So
I mean, you have an opportunity with what you're doing to kind of think big, think out of the box. I mean, you have all these people around you that are creatives of various types. You're there at your buddy's house who's a photographer, and just connecting outside of that. I think that's one thing, going back to Mike, that he was also very good at, is sort of just trying to broaden all of his horizons all the time and doing all these different things. And that's a good way to look at it, because it's like, it's easy to, like you said with Australia, of like, oh, I want to go and do this particular project, or, trips like that. But I don't know, there's just so much more fulfillment, I think, or things to be found, keeping your sort of mind open to like new ideas and breaking molds and things like that. And that motorcycle skateboard mountaineering trip, that was just right up his alley. But it's like those kind of ideas are, I don't know, just what makes life worth living when you have the resources. Totally. I mean, when you have the resources to do them, which I think you do at this time, you can be pitching ideas to the people with the money from all fronts.
Well, I promise to do my best and keep the mind open.
Well, cool, man. Thanks for reconnecting.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah. Like I said, it just kind of felt a little weird to drop that interview after so much time, and just kind of wondering what you were thinking about in the meantime, and the things that had happened. And I appreciate you catching us up.
Thanks for making it happen.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Sam for coming back on the show for a minute, catching us up. And a lot of times on the Tweeners, I actually don't do an outro, but I'm here this time, if you made it this far, to tell you one thing, and that is check your knots. Like, seriously, check your knots. Do it every single time. Check your climber's knots. If they've left the ground and you think to yourself, I forgot to check their knot, just look up and say, how's your knot? That's what I always do. The person looks down real quick, says it's good. You don't really have to see it. It's been checked, and everybody can relax. All right? And if you're tying your knot and there's too much going on and people are talking to you, just say, shut the fuck up while I finish this knot, please. Actually, don't even say please. Just say shut the fuck up for a second and check your knots. All right. Have a nice day.
Unlike the classical heroes, we're not going on our journey to save the world, but to save ourselves.
And in doing that, you save the world. I mean, you do. The influence of a vital person vitalizes. There's no doubt about it. The world is a wasteland.
The teachers told me that's where it's at, so I